flying. Godspeed, John Glenn.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground.
New possibilities are opening up for scientific cooperation between countries.
2-1-0. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Discovery, Roger. Go for deploy.
Thanks, Karen, and to everybody in the shuttle program. The crew is go for launch.
Roger. Nice to be in orbit.
We have followed in their footsteps to get us where we are today.
Good morning. It's Thursday, May 2nd. I'm NASA's Sandra Jones, and you're looking at a live view inside of the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft as we await its relocation from one docking port on the International Space Station to another. Today's port relocation of Dragon will see it move from the International Docking Adapter 2, or IDA-2, on the forward port of Harmony to IDA-3 on the Zenith, or space-facing Harmony port. This relocation is taking place ahead of the historic crewed flight test of the Boeing Starliner vehicle to the International Space Station, with NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams aboard. Starliner is slated to launch on Tuesday, May 6th at 10:34 p.m. But before that launch, we do need to move Dragon to the Zenith port to allow Starliner to dock to the forward port. At this hour, the team in Mission Control Houston, being led by Flight Director Paul Kanya, and SpaceX are working through a slight decrease in SpaceX cabin pressure. This is potentially due to one of the valves that controls cabin humidity inside Dragon. At this time, we're around 50 minutes down from the expected timeline. However, we are not up against a time constraint this morning for this relocation, and the team is going to continue to work through things, and we will provide updates along the way on that status. So again, today Crew 8 will be making a short trip in Dragon during this relocation. Crew 8 consists of NASA astronauts Matt Dominick, Mike Barratt, Jeanette Epps, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Grebenkin. Crew 8 is currently suited up and inside the Dragon Endeavour ahead of the undocking. We are now targeting that undocking command for around 7:30 a.m. Central, with physical separation at 7:35 a.m. Central. Following that, we are expecting redocking to occur on the Zenith port around 8:18 a.m. Central. And as always, it does take two to tango. Mission Control Houston is working very closely alongside SpaceX for this operation. So joining me today from SpaceX to discuss the operations a little further during this port relocation is Jesse Anderson. Hey, Jesse.
Thanks, Sandra, and good morning, everyone. I'm Jesse Anderson, a manufacturing engineering manager at SpaceX. This will be the fourth port relocation of a Dragon Crew spacecraft, following those of Crew 1, Crew 2, and Crew 6. At this point, the crew is suited. Both the Dragon and APAS hatches have been closed, and vestibule leak checks are coming up here shortly. There are 4 seats configured right now inside of Dragon and are numbered 1, 2, 4 from right to left when you are looking at the seats. Matthew Dominick is in seat 2, or the commander seat, and Michael Barratt is beside him in seat 3, which we can see there on the screen. And that is the pilot seat for Dragon. Jeanette Epps is in seat 4, and Alexander Grebenkin is in seat 1. The joint NASA and SpaceX teams just completed, or are waiting to complete some further checks prior to undocking. Once Dragon pushes away from station, the full maneuver will last approximately 45 minutes. While Dragon is just moving parking spots, the crew and the vehicle have undergone all the same checkouts and preparations as if they were getting ready to return back to Earth. That way, in the unlikely event that we see an off-nominal scenario, the crew and the vehicle are prepared to deorbit and return home safely.
Thanks, Jesse. Great to have you with us this morning. So again, teams are continuing to work through the procedure to relocate Endeavour from the forward port of Harmony to the zenith port. Inside the International Space Station, NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson is prime for completing these operations from the space station side. One of those tasks will include closing the A-Pass hatch, which is the androgynous peripheral assembly system, and it's the hatch on the space station side. That hatch is still open as the team continues to troubleshoot through this valve decrease. However, we are expecting that A-Pass hatch to be closed here shortly. The hatch on the Dragon side is already closed. And so you are getting a view inside the Dragon Endeavour there. The astronaut you can see primarily on your screen is NASA astronaut Mike Barratt. He is the pilot for this mission. Crew 8 is currently suited up, and inside the Dragon, as you see, they will remain in their spacesuits throughout this operation. Again, we are about 50 minutes down from the timeline this morning as the team continues to troubleshoot. We're expecting the undocking command to occur at 7:30 a.m. Central, with physical separation, meaning when you can actually see Dragon back away from the International Space Station, to occur at 7:35 a.m. Central. In all, the relocation takes about 45 minutes, so we are targeting around 8:18 a.m. Central for that redocking. However, these times are fluid and we'll continue to provide updates as we hear them. Again, there is no time constraint this morning while the team continues to troubleshoot.
And as we can see inside of Dragon, the crew is looking at their displays. They will just be monitoring as we do this undocking and redocking procedure, as Dragon is a fully autonomous vehicle. And they are just waiting for comms and an update, again, as Sandra mentioned. But great to see the crew awake and ready to go for this procedure.
And preparations for today's relocation have been ongoing. Yesterday, SpaceX completed Dragon's pre-departure preps, which included checkouts of the Dragon Eye system and seat actuations, as well as checking out Dragon's docking system, ground communications, and TDRS, which is the tracking and data relay satellite, and ground station checkouts. So looking a little ahead for this morning's activities, we do expect that A-Pass hatch to be closed. Following that hatch closure, we'll complete suit leak checks just to ensure that everything is performing as expected with the spacesuits in case there were an issue in which the crew needed to utilize those. Following that, we will have that undocking occur, targeting 7:30 a.m. Central for that command. Once Dragon does undock this morning, we expect a series of events to occur. First, we'll see two umbilicals that connect power and data between the two spacecraft will detach, and then the 12 hooks holding Dragon in its place will retract. After the hooks have retracted, Dragon will fire its thrusters in 2 short bursts, which helps break the stiction between Dragon and the International Space Station's docking port, and this is the point at which we are going to see physical separation of Dragon from the space station, again targeting 7:35 a.m. for that. Dragon will then slowly back away from the International Space Station and activate its LiDAR. This will help Dragon throughout the redocking procedure this morning. Once it acquires a solid signal, the ground will command Dragon to hold at approximately 60 meters away from the International Space Station. And from there, if everything looks good, Dragon will begin to move from in front of the space station to above it.
Go ahead, Dragon.
We're looking for a status update.
Yep, we are just getting some words together now. I will have those for you in another minute or so.
Copy, Specs. We imagine you have a couple of things you're looking at.
And with that call out, we did hear that the teams on the ground here in Mission Control Houston, as well as SpaceX, are comfortable and understand the issue and are going to continue to proceed to step through the procedures for today's port relocation of Crew 8 from the forward port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station to the Zenith port of the International Space Station.
We have checked the initial conditions against previous flight data and realized that there's a slightly different set of initial conditions than previous missions, which led us to think that the pressure drop was greater than it actually, was out of family high. But in a deeper dive into the data, it appears that the drop is actually in family, and what we saw was due to a slightly higher PPO2 in the vehicle at starting, which meant we didn't have O2 injections, which made us think we were losing pressure. So we have also checked against the dehumidifier acceptance testing for this vehicle and determines that the behavior of the banks is healthy. All of that gives us no concerns with any of the dehumidifier banks, but we are going to keep Bravo 2 isolated for the port relocation, and we'll do a deeper dive on that after the operation is complete. How copy?
SpaceX Dragon, man, we really appreciate the deep dive level detail you guys have got down to. Greatly appreciate it. We can tell you care. Thank you.
All right, Dragon SpaceX. With that, we are going to continue on with our nominal port relocation actions. First of those is suit leak checks, which we are ready to support when you are.
SpaceX Dragon copies. With that, we believe we're giving us a go in 1.1 for suit leak check.
Affirm, go for suit leak checks.
Dragon.
TC Houston on the Big Loop.
Go ahead on 2 for station.
And TC, we're ready for you to pick back up in step 5.3 and 2.103 to close the APAS hatch.
Right, putting 5.3 in work.
And so we did hear some conversation between the ground up to Crew 8 on board the Endeavour spacecraft that they are go to proceed with those suit leak checks and comm checks. NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson will continue to work to get the APAS hatch closed on the International Space Station side.
Yeah, Sandra, that was some great news that they had been looking into the data as they were preparing for this departure from the International Space Station, uh, but confirming that there are no
And
issues
we
with
are
the
getting
cabin
a
pressure.
view back inside the International.
SpaceX Dragon ready to pressurize in 2.2.
Copy, Matt. You have a go to initiate suit leak check.
Copy, go.
And so again, we are getting a view inside the International Space Station. That is NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson. She's going to step through some procedures to get the APAS hatch closed. You see her getting that hatch closed there. Following hatch closure, she'll work to take some photos for the ground to analyze and just make sure everything is looking good ahead of our undocking of Crew 8 for today's port relocation.
And what you are all seeing on your screen is NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson working to close the APAS hatch. And a moment ago, we did see her have a tablet in front of her. She is following procedures and instructions as she works through this operation. Again, this is in preparation for the relocation of the Dragon spacecraft. Again, we did get confirmation that there are no issues with the Dragon spacecraft, and suit leak check operations are currently in WIP.
Houston, station on the Pixie and Dragon crew. APAS hatch and APAS equalization valve are closed, ready for Dragon IDA vestibule depress.
Here's your copies.
Great confirmation from Tracy APAS hatch.
Copy, Dragon. We see the same.
And we did hear confirmation that the APAS hatch is closed and depressurization of the vestibule is beginning. And the undocking command is expected for 7:40 a.m. Central Time.
We are in a brief expected handover between our satellites, but we'll regain views here shortly of the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft with Crew 8 on board. At this time, vestibule depressurization is underway. The vestibule is the space between Dragon and the space station hatches that is exposed to the vacuum of space.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Control of cabin air temperature via 4.080 is now allowed. I would also like you to swap one of your suits to Dragon to ground and give me a comm check on that pathway.
Copies on the big loop.
And so we did just hear those words up to the crew discussing that following this they will have some communication checks with their spacesuits to ensure that the ground can communicate effectively with Crew 8 during the port relocation. At this point, the team is communicating on what is called the Big Loop. That is a tie-in between SpaceX, Mission Control Houston, as well as the Crew onboard Endeavour. The team communicates on the Big Loop during integrated operations.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Ground is going to initiate vestibule depressurization shortly.
And we are continuing to get some views inside the International Space Station as NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson works through those procedures to close the APAS hatch. Back inside Dragon, depressurization continues, as well as those suit leak checks and communication checks. So the next milestone that we're looking ahead this morning towards is vestibule depress. Again, that's that area between the two hatches that was exposed to vacuum.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop with vestibule depress started. We are expecting an undock time of 12:40.
The big loop, copy 12:40. Thank you.
As the team continues to step through those procedures ahead of the undocking and port relocation of Crew 8 this morning, we are now targeting a command to be sent for undocking at 7:40 a.m. Central, with physical separation occurring at about 7:45 a.m. Central Time this morning. And we are targeting a redock to the zenith port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station at 8:28 a.m. Central. And if you are just joining us this morning, we are covering live the port relocation of Crew 8 from the forward port of the Harmony module to the zenith port of the International Space Station in preparation for the Boeing Starliner vehicle to arrive next week.
Right, and this will just be a very short procedure. Dragon will be moving from IDA 2, or the forward-facing Harmony port, to IDA 3 on the zenith or space-facing side of the Harmony port. So it will be a very short trip, just about 45 minutes for the entire undocking procedure and redocking procedure.
This morning, the team in Mission Control Houston, as well as SpaceX, did work through a decrease in SpaceX cabin pressure, but the team now does understand that issue being due to one of the valves that controls cabin humidity inside Dragon. After looking into the decrease, SpaceX and Mission Control Houston are comfortable and are stepping through the next procedures ahead of undocking. At this time, we are around an hour down from the expected timeline, targeting the undocking command to be sent at 7:40 a.m. Central. We'll see physical separation at 7:45 a.m. Central, and expecting redocking to occur to that zenith port at 8:28 a.m. Central.
Houston Station on the Big Loop, just checking in 7.4 that IMV is deactivated.
Yes, that's correct. IMV is deactivated.
Roger, thanks.
Currently, if you're just now joining us, we are looking at a live view inside of Dragon Endeavour, and we can see the commander, Matthew Dominick, in seat 2, as well as Michael Barratt in seat 3 in the pilot's seat, as we prepare for the relocation of Dragon from IDA 2 to IDA 3. And as we were going through preparations, we were reviewing some data, noticing some data that may have been something to look into, but we did confirm that there are no issues with Dragon and everything is proceeding nominally with the Dragon spacecraft.
That's right, Jesse. And the APAS hatch, the Androgynous Peripheral Assembly System hatch inside the International Space Station, is now closed.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. I made a couple comm check attempts on Dragon to ground. Wanted to see if you were hearing those. I am not getting comm from you.
Sarah, we were waiting a little bit. We made a couple comm checks. We were going to wait till we get a ground check to try it again.
Okay, copy that.
And as you heard, the teams are working on some comm checks. This is to make sure that they do have communication between Dragon and ground during the redocking operations. Sounds like they're working through this procedure right now.
And this view inside the International Space Station of NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson. Again, she's working through those hatch closure procedures. The APAS hatch is closed. Following this, they will pressurize the vestibule. That's the area that will be exposed to vacuum following the undocking of Dragon. Dragon will be moving from the forward port of Harmony to the zenith port of Harmony in anticipation of the Boeing Starliner vehicle arrival with NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams. Starliner is slated to launch on Tuesday, May 6th at 10:34 p.m. Central. But again, before that launch, we do need to move Dragon to the zenith port to allow Starliner to dock to that forward port. The team was working an issue earlier this morning with one of the valves that controls humidity in the cabin not behaving properly. However, that issue has since been better understood and resolved, and the team is now proceeding through the undocking procedures. We are targeting the undocking command to be sent at 7:40 a.m. Central. About 5 minutes later, we'll see the physical separation. It takes about 5 minutes for the umbilicals to retract and for the 12 hooks that hold Dragon to the International Space Station to retract.
Dragon Crew from station, note to forward patch and MPEV are closed. And I'll put the photos on SSE 19.
Here's the copies.
And so those words from NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson down to the ground, letting them know that hatch closure is complete.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. For the Dragon to ground comm, we think the routing is set up incorrectly on our side, so we're doing some troubleshooting there. I will initiate a comm check once we have it to the correct configuration.
Yeah, that makes sense. We had tried from our end as well, and we're just waiting for a handover to maybe try again, so that works. Thanks.
And as we just heard, we are working through some comms communication issues. It sounds like we are going to attempt to rewire on the ground side to make sure that these comms do work properly during this relocation procedure. And again, this is exactly why we do these checks, the suit leak checks, the comms checks. That is to make sure that we do have everything working properly during these procedures.